Hello everyone, and welcome back down here to the Gamer's Den with me, your host, Jordan, your master of lore and storyteller extraordinaire. Joining me today, in some capacity, is my most adorable co-host, Nora, initiate of lore and also master of the seventh circle of, well, some of the deeper, most eldritch mysteries I've ever seen. And she is, of course, made off with the book that was balancing up my microphone here, so I'm probably just going to hold on to this for now while I'm chatting with all of you wonder folks that took the time to come down here and join me for a moment as we dig more into putting it all together. Putting what together? Putting together all the different things and ideas that you need in order to come up with a good story and a good campaign setting. Or if you already have a pre-made campaign setting already figured out, then just taking all those different details, those NPCs, those different plots, towns, cities, locations, all the different things that you need to run a successful adventure for your players. That's right, little one, you know exactly what I'm talking about here today. But last time we went over some setting details, the towns, the location, and just a brief overview of what was happening overall. But now we are digging into the factions. Which factions are going to be in this setting here? Well, we are in the Alaran Hills region, a remote, forested, hilly, and mountainous region, rugged, out on the very fringes of civilization. This region has only been settled within, well, relatively recent years, just within the last decade or so, and has had some sizable towns spring up, as well as numerous outlying villages, production centers that the main central hub supports. So, starting us off with our first bunch of factions, well, let's just go over the three factions that I've put together here for this specific story. First is Tildeus, which is the central urban hub. Then we have the Elder Oak Druid Circle. And we have the Unaligned, the factions that haven't quite gone one way or the other. They're not allied with either of the two principal antagonizing forces within this particular story. But these are larger generalized factions. Large organizations of people will almost always have different subsets and different factions within themselves. And to emphasize this, starting us off with Tildeus here, they have, of course, the City Guard, which are loyal to their liege lord, to the mayor, to the captain of the guard. Then you have the Merchants Order of the Silver Wheel. The different merchant caravans operate through them. They are probably one of the largest, if not the largest, merchant organizations within this area. They have the most number of caravans going from Tildeus back down further south to the deeper recesses of the civilized lands. But not all of these are upstanding, orderly types of factions. You also have, this is her favorite part, the Flint Blade Beggars Guild. You also have the Half Moon Thieves Guild and the Blackheart Thieves Guild. All three of these guilds here, they are in competition with one another. They're certainly not friendly towards the city guard, but you can imagine if somebody were actually going to be threatening the destruction of their home city, put at risk their profits, their lives. My goodness, all the money they haven't stolen yet. You can bet they'd be willing to rally around and possibly even provide scout or assassination services on behalf of the city in order, if for no other reason than just to simply survive. But then again, maybe one of these factions might be a bit more cutthroat and be willing to sell their services and go turncoat and aid the Elder Oak Druid Circle in exchange for dominion, riches, or just even the ability to leave with their lives intact. But from there, from said Elder Oak Druid Circle, we have the Greenthorn Forest. Now, why would the forest be counted as a faction? Well, given the ancient nature of this forest, the sheer number of spirits and unique and unusual animals that dwell within it, the overall spirit of the forest can said to be its own particular entity and alive in and of itself. Nominally allied with the Elder Oak Druid Circle, or even the Elder Oak Druid Circle is more another piece of this particular forest. How you go about representing that in the lore over the gameplay is up to you, but it's certainly worthwhile to think of it as its own separate entity. Certainly the Druids would think so. And of course, you have the devotees of the Oak. It's a nomadic cult following that has devoted itself to the Druids, to their, to worshiping them, tending to them, aiding and helping them in any way that they can. They've given up the trappings of civilization and now have a more nomadic lifestyle and are more at one with nature, the forest, and live in a more harmonious existence with the Druids. No feasting on the books there, little one. You know what happens when you ingest too much raw and dangerous knowledge like that. Ancient lores are meant to be taken in carefully with consideration and with the proper wardings in place. Excellent job. Thank you for listening. Then you have the Order of the Sundered Axe. Now, this particular faction is are the ones going on the offensive, or rather, they're trying to stir everybody else up into going on the offensive and turning against the Tildeans openly, violently, and with all the aggressive, hateful ardor that can be mustered. After them, we have the Timid. The Timid are the members of the Elder Oak Druid Circle who don't want to see out-and-out total war take place here. Certainly destroying the lumber camp, the mills, that would be something acceptable. Taking out vengeance against the hunters, that would certainly be something that they are all for. But they don't want to see all these innocent people wiped out. Yes, they are alarmed at their expansions, but they can limit their efforts to just keeping them away, scaring them away, killing some of the more aggressive of the transgressors. See, this is what happens when you ingest too many of these things. You get into trouble and get into a state. One moment, folks. I apologize for that interruption there, folks. After ingesting some of the more dangerous and darker lores possible, without the proper wardings in place, my young initiate actually ended up in a full state of temper tantrum afterwards. Crying, flinging herself about the floor, levitating in the air, screaming out the dark words to summon the sleeping dreamer here. And, well, she had to be put to bed and was not at all happy with me when I secreted away these dark materials from her. But with that said, we can continue on exploring the different factions here for putting together a good adventure for you, yourself, your friends, and all different points in between there. So we covered the Timid last. They are not interested in total war. They want to limit the this campaign of aggression. Not that they aren't afraid of the idea of spilling blood. They certainly do want to see vengeance exacted, some kind of justice meted out against the transgressors, but they don't want to punish all of the civilized people. They are more measured in their approach. But when compared against the more extremist faction of the Druid Circle that is howling for blood, they certainly seem much more timid in comparison. But then after that you have the unaligned, and I only did 2 unaligned factions here. The Redmane Bandits and the Court of Raethilinval of the Summer Fae. It's too much of a mouthful to say this late at night. But these 2 particular factions can present some interesting challenges here. It's an opportunity for you to make use of these different factions, these 2 different groups, in interesting ways. The bandits could be turned onto either the factions of Tildeus or the Elder Oak Druid Circle, and particularly the Court of the Summer Fae. They could be an interesting threat here, because the Druids certainly would be interested in opening up positive relations there. They want a good working relationship. A military alliance would go over so well and help in their efforts in removing the citizens of Tildeus. Conversely, flip side of that same coin, the citizens of Tildeus would certainly rather the Fae stay out of it entirely. In my own personal take, I don't see the Fae allying with a bunch of city-dwelling people, especially not waving around that much iron and steel. but keeping them out of the fight is still just as good. Well, maybe not quite as good as having more allies come in, but certainly limiting the number of enemies you have to fight is incredibly strategically important and useful. And so this faction will present a good adventure opportunity for you to throw at your players. Not that they want to go into straight up combat with the Fae, but preventing them from reaching an amicable military alliance with the Druids. That should be a major goal for the players. Certainly they don't have to. If they mess things up enough, don't pay attention, ignore this particular subplot entirely, they can certainly skip by it, but it will mean having to fight more enemies later on as the campaign goes on, as this adventure carries through towards its natural course as the two forces collide in armed open conflict. So again, limiting the number of enemies will be incredibly useful. But what good are these factions on their own? You need people to populate them, and in particular, since the faction going on the offensive are the Elder Oak Druid Circle, we should know a little bit more about them. And I've already put together a little bit of lore here in order to give you a certain sense of background that you can use to sprinkle bits of information and lore out for your players in order to make the world just feel that much more alive. Like there's a sense of history that actions had preceded their arrival, and their own actions will impact the course of events through this adventure. So, for the Elder Oak Druid Circle, this sect of druids has ancient ties to the lands in and around the Alaran Hills. As ancient guardians and keepers of the wilds and numerous sacred groves, they've been reacting with more and more alarm at the wide swaths of forests cut down, and the grasslands made grazing fields for the expanding numbers of cattle. The recent destruction of a particularly revered grove and its guardian spirit has driven the forces of nature the druids revere to react violently, along with a good number of the circle, their acolytes, and their worshippers. Now, strange sicknesses spread through the aged forest and among its beasts, driving out hunters, violently rending cattle, and attacking merchants along the road. The Elder Oak Druids have largely joined this crusade and have fully enveloped themselves in what they believe is nature's wrath. While not fully wrong, they are being led astray by Elder Elias Briarthorn, keeper of the Third Stone, whose grove and animal companion were ransacked and destroyed by hunters from Milltown. Forming the Order of the Sundered Axe, Elias and his followers are now using their position to leverage dissenters into silence, urging the Circle's worshippers to follow them, and are attempting to entreat the Fae courts to their side in the hopes of wiping out Tildeus and driving out the civilized peoples. They are cutting off outside communication, encircling strong points, and spreading corruption through themselves and the natural spirits that they held dear. So that should give you an idea of the setting, and also should help kind of set the tone, or at least make it easier for you to set the tone. You can have the players come across different scenes of destruction, strange, sickly animals that just seem to have an unnatural amount of strength or violence or even rage to them, foaming at the mouth, carrying on despite the numbers of ragged wounds that now just seem to fester. These things will help to really emphasize to the players just how much is going wrong here, and just how far this particular sickness, this violence, the everything that these druids are now trying to enact is spreading. And that's what you really want to emphasize to the players. But to that end, next time we are going to take a look at the antagonist, the big bad evil guy himself, set up for this particular story, Elias Briarthorn. Should be a lot of fun. I loved building this character, and honestly, he's an absolute beast, just a total wrecking machine. I mean, Level 13 Druid should be a lot of fun. Full spellcasting classes always do so well as antagonists, and not only that, but Druids, when put together properly, can be a full spellcasting class as well as just an in-your-face brawling wrecking machine. So, I hope you enjoyed today's video. I certainly hope you will continue to enjoy the content produced here. I apologize that this video was, well, I guess it's within the range of what I normally produce, but it certainly was a relatively quick one. With that said, I've been your host, Jordan, your master of lore and storyteller extraordinaire. You guys have yourselves a good night.